So as I'm recording this, the series just ended and I kind of felt like talking about it a little bit. And yeah, this was one of my favorite series for this past winter season. It was actually super entertaining all throughout, and I think there's generally a lot that can be taken from it, at least for me anyways. So I'm here to talk about some of those things and thoughts that this series brought up as I was watching it. Since the first episodes, in the first few episodes, I really liked the premise. I thought it was interesting, and all of the aspects that they presented seemed to be genuinely grounded and logical. The things, some of the tasks that were given to Tomozaki were really good approach to learning how to communicate more effectively and less awkwardly. Little things like how to present yourself, like a little smile, wearing clothing that matches you or like fits you well, fits in your hair a little bit. All of these things are most definitely aspects that are important and are literally quite the foundation of the first impression or the impression you give people around you. So I was definitely kind of happy to see an anime that actually took real aspects that were applicable to the real world. As the series advanced in Takumi, or what was his name, Takumi? Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Why did I put that? I was watching Initial D. As the series advanced and Tomozaki continued to do tasks, we genuinely saw him level up as a person. He was able to engage with more people, and although he was still sort of awkward, he was improving. I was also really captivated by their concept of life as a god tier game. I think it's not a bad way to view life, as something that we can constantly improve at by practicing and just taking sort of a methodical approach to certain aspects of it. Life is what you make of it after all, and I don't know, it's not really necessarily a complicated message, but I feel like this anime was just a good reminder of that, and it's something that I want to keep in mind more often as I move forward in life myself. All of the characters that appear in the anime were also interesting. They all had different motives and were in somewhat different positions, which made it intriguing to see their perspectives. Tomosaki as a character was really fun because he began as someone who was slightly socially inept, but starts taking a gamer approach to his life and to self-improvement kind of. And I thought that was nice because it's a language that's relatable and that a lot of people can understand. I'm not a professional gamer, and I would assume that most people aren't either, but as someone who grew up playing video games and it's a huge part of my life, I find that an appealing aspect of the series. Moving on to other characters, I also thought that Mimimi was an interesting character. The way she looked up to Aoi and was constantly trying to overcome that wall of being number two or being the second. And well, to be fair, I don't think I've ever met people like her. I think that's something that people can possibly relate to as far as trying to overcome a wall that seems rather impossible. Although, moving on to the next character, Aoi is as a character is kind of insane. Although she's definitely kind of wrong about not having desires of her own, that just sounds kind of stupid. She left me wondering if there was actually anyone that takes such a serious and conscious approach to all the different aspects of their life. I mean, if there are, I want to meet them. Like, where are you? And like, that's kind of crazy. She genuinely left me curious to know if there was anyone I've met that was actually so careful and so intentful with the things they did and say. That was interesting. It's an anime though, like, you gotta keep that in mind. As far as my personal impression goes regarding the theme of the series, to be fully honest, throughout my life, the impression I had is that some people are just good at certain things or have certain good qualities. Maybe they're smart or good looking. Maybe they really like something like a sport or playing chess or gaming. And maybe they're really passionate about that. And that's how they just went about their life through those things that they had going for them or that they really like. For example, smart people who usually tend to care about their academics and are trying to reach whatever goals they have, or someone that's good looking and they're popular and they try to maintain that popularity, or somebody that's just social and outgoing and that keeps them going every day. I mostly felt that the majority of people, at least when we were young or relatively young or teenagers, just sort of were riding along with the lives that they just had through a singular perspective, not really looking around or trying to understand how others think. At least that's how it was for me, and I just had assumed that it was like that for most other people. That's not necessarily true, of course, because that's just my singular perspective. But anyhow, I've personally I've personally tried to become more intentional with certain things and improve in different aspects of my life recently. as I gotten older, but I've never actually considered something such as a specific goals in so many different aspects of my life, like talking to a person 3 times, memorizing conversation topics to fill conversations, or raising an opinion to the cool kid 3 times, recording your voice to practice saying something and not have your voice crack or something. Um, I mean, that's technically what I'm doing right now. Anyways, I actually agree that these kinds of goals can become a genuine foundation to level up in life. To be quite fair, this would take a tremendous amount of effort though. I would imagine that most people usually tackle 1 or 2 things at once when it comes to improving, but now I'm just kind of wondering if anyone was actually thinking about all of this back in high school, for example, because I certainly was not. And to be honest, for most of my life, I just been going with the flow and riding along, given that I made the assumption that probably the majority of people were too. Or I guess I'm making that assumption now because I don't think I ever thought about that as I was younger. But, you know, I guess that's not necessarily true. Even now that I think I'm making more conscious efforts, it's nowhere near the level of Aoi to constantly be the best, or even Tomozaki taking such a serious approach to following her advice and the tasks he's given. That's actually extremely commendable and kind of insane to think about. Obviously, this is a fictional story and it should be taken with a grain of salt, but I think it's still rather interesting to consider what sort of approach are other people taking through their life. So I found that interesting throughout the series. So watching this anime, I totally feel like I learned a few things and would actually like to rewatch it at some point in the near future and take a look at it more carefully. But I think there's a few things that are worth pointing out, and I do hope I remember them all. But first is putting an effort does make a difference. Actually trying to be sociable and, you know, just a decent person does make an impact as to how you're perceived by people. This is completely obvious, but I personally get caught up in situations or surrounded by individuals that I'm at times not totally comfortable with. Maybe I don't know them very well, or I happen to be meeting people for the first time and I don't make any particular effort to be engaging or welcoming. Sometimes it can be hard, especially if you're not used to those sort of situations. But after watching the first few episodes when Tomozaki was learning how to smile, I actually tried smiling and realized that it took a lot of effort. It wasn't natural at all, and I could feel my muscles making the effort to stretch. So it's clearly not a movement that my face is accustomed to doing, which is rather concerning. There's also basic stuff like taking care of your general appearance, a good fitting clothing, styling your hair, possibly leaving a little fashion in there, having a good posture, which I don't have right now, communicating effectively and such. I also started to feel that maybe the popular kids aren't necessarily so bad. As I was watching the anime, I was thinking how Tomosaki trying to hang out with the group of kids that were popular was just kind of superficial. These kids just seem like they wanted to act as if they were a superior class, I guess, and I guess they were. But as Tomosaki continued to hang out with them and sort of level his social standing, I guess, to theirs, it felt as if I could understand them a little more. It isn't necessarily that they're straight up superficial. I think it just kind of difficult to be able to interact in the same manner in which they do. I think. Besides that, the times when the popular people are superficial or behave as if they were superior to others are usually when they're surrounded by others and want to prove their worth in a way. But I feel that I found, I don't know, once you understand how to communicate in the same playing field as them, it feels as if it becomes easier to sort of understand those types of social interactions. Obviously, this is an interpretation from a fictional story, so, you know, take that into consideration. But as I thought back to similar groups of people that I've known and met throughout my life, I think that through this line of thinking, I was sort of able to make more sense of some behaviors and interactions that I've encountered in my own life, which was quite interesting, and I'm not gonna lie. So, bottom tier character. Reaching the end of this, I have to talk about being a bottom tier character. I have to say that even as the series began, I never actually felt like Tomosaki was an actual bottom tier character, and as the series developed, I feel like it kind of proved that. I do understand that the whole point of the series is I hope is to display, I hope I understood the point of the series, that is to display that making an effort can take you places. And while I wholeheartedly agree with that, I just didn't feel like Tomozaki was actually bottom tier character at all. For real, to start off, Tomozaki is not really a bad looking guy, in my opinion. Although that can be hard to interpret because this is an anime and standards are shifted to the style of animation. But realistically, I think it can be agreed that he's doing pretty good for himself, and he's also a smart guy, so he's seen lacking in the intelligence department. He's also quite literally the best player in Japan in TACFAN, and that's really fucking impressive. You can't be the top player of a game that's played by millions of people and consider yourself a bottom tier anything. That's kind of bullshit. And then there was also this scene.
フミヤお前おおマジすっごい何ちょっと前腕くらいやるっしょこれ前腕って前腕くんいや前腕でワンちゃんだな話してくれ拷問だぜこいつ
Like, what aspects actually make him a bottom tier character? All things considered, to me, it felt like Tomozaki was a character that had just struggled with social interactions, lacked social skills due to his upbringing, or was straight up too smart for his own good when he was young. I don't know. He just didn't know anything or care about how he presented himself, which is just kind of important for life in general. Anyhow, I just don't feel that he was bottom tier character at all. I feel that he just lacked the information he needed to not be perceived as such, which is evident given that he learns from Aoi and he does start to perceive things differently, and he himself enjoys the self-improvement that he goes through. But I don't think I will go as far as calling him a bottom tier character. He's doing pretty good for himself. I think he's doing pretty good for himself, and it's just like, bro, like, really, what are you complaining about? Like, you're like, he just seemed to have a pretty good life. I mean, like, that seemed like a pretty first world life to me. I don't know. I don't feel like those are the aspects that make you a bottom tier character. Or like, you know, anyhow, moving on. I genuinely enjoy the series quite a lot. I think it was really entertaining, and beyond that, it discusses an important theme that can be really informative. I really like the growth that Tomozaki experienced because it was low, and even towards the end where you can see all of his improvements, you can still see his awkwardness, which just kind of adds a nice sense of his personality and kind of realistic growth, which to my eye makes it more fun to watch. At the end of the series, we also get our face-off between the two main characters and their difference in values, to which I think Tomozaki is kinda on the right track, mixing the things he can improve with the things that he actually wants for himself in his life. I say that this was a pretty solid anime. I wasn't really certain what to expect of the series as I started watching it on a whim, but honestly, I am beyond happy and content I watched it, and I hope there's a second season of it in the future. Yeah. So if you made it to the end, thank you for watching this, and hope you enjoyed it or found something of value in it, I guess, maybe. So yeah, maybe I'll make another one. Maybe. Hopefully.